The next thing to look at is time. Now, hard as it is to believe, we never had a standard for time until the late 50s. See, up until the late 50s, time was time. A second was a second. It never changed. But along come old Bertie Einstein, and he said time is relative. Lunchtime doubly so. You know, because sometimes lunchtime seems to last for ages and sometimes it doesn't. So we need to have some sort of standard for time. And the people said, oh, yeah, no worries. All we need to do is say, look, we'll have a second. And at 1 second, since there's 86,400 seconds in a day, all we need to do is measure how long a day is and divide it by 86,400. At which point, they ran into their first problem. The Earth doesn't go round the sun, or doesn't go round nice and evenly. The Earth's a bit wobbly. So they said, oh, well, okay, if the Earth's a bit wobbly, all we'll do is, we'll say, in 1 year, there's 31,556,925 and a bit of change seconds. So all we do is measure how long a year is and divide it by that big number, and that'll be a second. At which point they discovered that the Earth wobbles. The Earth doesn't go round the sun. A year is not the same length every year. So they got a bit worried at this point. What are they going to use to explain the length of a second? At this point they discovered the true thing that all instrument people discover, and that's that if no one can check on you, then it's got to be right. So some scientist came up with the definition of a second, and he said 1 second is the time it takes for 9,192,631,770 transitions of the cesium-133 atom into the cesium-134 atom. And since nobody could understand what the hell he was talking about, no one argued with him. So that's the second. So they built a nice little clock in Rugby in the UK, and they called it the atomic clock. And they attached a radio to the clock, and that radio would transmit the time. And there'd be a nice little girl with a British accent saying, at the third stroke, it will be 7:57 precisely. Beep, beep, beep. Now what they've forgotten was that it takes about 15 seconds for that radio signal to go from Rugby in the UK to Perth in Australia. So it wasn't a very good system. So the next thing they did was they built 5 of these clocks and they dotted them around the Earth. Now, in recent years, what they've done is they've got 3 of these clocks and they've attached them to the GPS system. So now, the GPS is our time standard because they're attached to the atomic clocks. So that's time. We've only had a really good standard for time since about 1997. So it's a very recent thing.